Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
Oh, g'day. I bet you thought the world was fucked up in 2023, right? Well, let me tell you, things get a lot worse in 2033.
Huey, what's going down?
Here I am making the sickest cones on the planet. But where have all the surfers gone? It's a disaster, mate.
Oh, they're still around. They just don't remember they're surfers anymore.
Fuck sticks. We need a hero.
You mean someone like him?
Mick Fanning! Tell him to get his crew together to make the greatest surf movie in the universe. If he fails, I'm gonna melt his fucking face off.
Mick, I've been sent here to give you a mission to save surfing. Let's do this.
Get fucked! Away, hot unicorn. Mason, Wilco, Endo, do you remember me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, guys, so...
What are you on, cunt?
Mick, I got this.
Hey, stop ruining my horse.
Oh, shit.
Come at me, bro. You failed, boys. Unless you've got a time machine, surfing is lost.
Oi!
Time to end this shit.
This is the best. Are you kidding me?
Remember, the future of surfing is depending on us.
That is dead set the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 528. Currently on a roadshow tour across Australia is The Greatest Surf Movie in the Universe, a stop-motion comedy that spoofs surf culture, yet does so with a big heart, filthy mouth, and a love for all things ridiculous. Featuring the likes of surfing greats Mick Fanning, Kelly Slater, and Mason Ho, along with Luke Hemsworth. The Greatest Surf Movie in the Universe harkens back to a time when Australian film used to embrace its silly side without fear or favour. And joining me now is the co-director of The Greatest Surf Movie in the Universe, Mr. Vaughan Blakey. Vaughan, how are you today?
Hello, Matt. Very well. Thank you for having us on.
Well, absolutely. And I just want to let everyone know, currently there is a premiere on May 22nd at the Hayden Orpheum, and also at the Byron Theatre. I believe there's a second show, another show added soon. Or maybe that's already passed. I think that might have already been passed. But May 22nd, Hayden Orpheum in Sydney. You can go to garage.com.au and find tickets there. And I do really recommend people watch this in the cinemas, Vaughan, because I don't know about you, but I think this is the kind of film that really works with a community, with a crowd of people. And I know you've had some screenings so far on your roadshow. How's the reception been to the film, and what's it like for you to be able to have a movie out there now after 3 or so years of working on it?
Yeah, mate. You couldn't be more spot on. I mean, if you're a surfer and you have grown up surfing in this country in particular, I think that there's a cultural reconnection to sort of a time where surfing wasn't as mainstream, and it was a little bit more of a subculture of degenerates and iconoclasts and just really, out there folk who were living on the fringe of society and really enjoyed sort of not being part of the mainstream. And so even though surfing has become a much more sort of acceptable thing to do in, terms of like where it sits in society, a lot of us grew up in a time where that wasn't so much the case. So, this sort of is a throwback to that time. And judging from the responses in cinemas, which have been heavily populated with surfers in the sort of I'd say 30 to 50 range. The response has been non-stop laughter. And like I've been to a few films, comedies where you get a couple of laughs here and there, but this is just non-stop. It's fantastic. Like the jokes have really landed. There's a lot of, as you said in your intro, kind of quite basic sort of, I don't want to say gutter or toilet humor, but there is a bit of that sort of stuff in there. Just that sort of like real primal, elemental humor where you're not scared to just laugh at anything. Because at the end of the day, surfing is just a fun thing to do. You're quite privileged if you're able to surf, particularly in this country. And it's nice to just be able to tear it down and laugh at it, but without actually demeaning it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, with me, when I watched the film, I think it kind of harkens back to the days where once upon a time in Australian film and Australian cinema, you had guys like the late, great Barry Humphries and Barry Crocker, and they had movies like The Adventures of Barry Mackenzie. And it's like this really kind of segment of Australian cinema where it's not about being mean-spirited, it's about having a sense of humor, it's a sense of comedy, and about, going to places comedy-wise where some people might not be comfortable with, but it's funny nevertheless anyway. And is that something that like yourself and Nick really wanted to bring about, is just like make sure that a sense of humor is present in Australian cinema? Because I don't know about you, I've been covering Australian film for over like 17, 18 years now, and I think it's gotten a little too serious, a little too up itself over the years, and it's good to have a film kind of like your movie to just kind of like, bring a sense of humor back in it, but not only a sense of humor, but a quintessential Australian sense of humor to it as well.
Oh, mate, yeah, I think when I was a Grom, it definitely wasn't something we did intentionally, and certainly not for the Australian cinematic community. But I definitely feel like we did that in response to sort of surfing going down the same path where, surfing is in an incredible place right now, Matt. Like it's so inclusive. It's so, it's really about, making sure everyone has the opportunity and potential to enjoy surfing. And that's fantastic. And that is amazing. But it doesn't have to come at the expense of being, like you're saying, having a sense of humor. I think if your sense of humor is, not being mean and not putting people down or not being sort of, ignorant, then, you can be as ridiculous and as stupid as you want. And I know that what you're talking about in Australian cinema, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like the Australian comedies of the 70s and 80s in particular, and then even into the 90s, that there were some incredibly funny movies being made, but we just seem to have, I don't know why we're not tapping into that humor anymore. Maybe it's just the sort of a reflection of society. Maybe everyone's just overly cautious about who they could potentially offend, and I just don't know if that's the right thing to do as an artist, is worry about being offended or offending people, because to offend people in this culture and in this time, it seems to be the end of a conversation. Like it's like the full stop. You offend someone, you risk being cancelled, your reputation goes down the tube, all this. But really, offending people should be the start of a conversation. If you make people feel uncomfortable, well, we're not here to make sure that your sensibilities are looked after. We're here because that discomfort needs to be addressed. Like if you feel any discomfort, you've got to figure out within yourself where that's coming from and why you're uncomfortable with it, and then talk and get the discussion rolling. So it's so weird to talk about this in relation to the film that we've made because it really is so ridiculous. But to kind of answer your question, no, I don't think it was intentional. But one thing Nick and I did right from the word go was just try to make each other laugh as much as we could. Like if we could get because I wrote the script, I wrote it to make Nick laugh. I didn't write it so that even thinking for 1 second that people would be watching this on a big screen. And the way the film got momentum and its journey to the big screen was almost like a step-by-step thing. Like it started off as just a tiny project that Nick and I were going to make, and then it got the backing of Bronte Pictures, who saw something similar to what you saw when you watched it and saw the potential and just went, yeah, this is actually good timing for something like this, and full credit to them and thank you to them for making it happen, because it actually is quite satisfying to sit in a room full of people laughing at dick jokes, basically.
Where did the stop motion animation part of it kind of come into fruition? Was this something that I know Nick, that's something that's really hands-on, like Nick's kind of territorial stuff, and I heard in an interview say before that it took him like 2.5 years of like just him being in his garage and moving these figures, inch by inch, waiting for extra little pieces to come from different places, make new models, etc. The idea to make stop motion animation, it's not something you see much anymore. I think I've seen maybe 3 or 4 movies like that in the last like 10 years or so. To see one is quite a treat. So where did that idea kind of come from? And once you guys are in the swing of it, any kind of regrets in regards to going down that lane, because it does take a long time to get a movie like that put together?
Yeah, it was quite satisfying, actually. The stop motion animation, the more we did it, the more we learned what we could do. So we were, at first, everything was quite two-dimensional, and then we understood that, if we had characters turning away from each other, like just weird little tricks that you can use to make a scene more dynamic. And we just, like I say, the further we went into it, the more we were able to sort of flex what we'd learned. And the film is made chronologically pretty much. I'm almost positive it starts off with 2 characters and it ends with, an all-in brawl. And you can imagine that if we tried to film that brawl first, we would have had no idea what we were doing. So, that was cool. But I think that the idea for it just came from Mick Fanning having a bobblehead made of him years and years ago. And Nick just ripped that bobblehead off and started fooling around with a bit of stop motion animation. And that was his baby after that. He just went, I want to make a whole movie of this. And it flew on from that. He tried to get me involved pretty early, but I wasn't really that I wasn't as stoked on the stop motion animation as he was. And I eventually sort of came around when he started getting, basically I came around because he got a bit of budget to make it, because it was like I could see how time consuming it was going to be, and I knew that once you're in on a project like this, you need to far out be able to justify that you're spending time in a garage to your wife and your family playing with dolls for 3 years. There's got to be some sort of remuneration for the peace in the home life. But it was funny because Nick went through so much making this film. He had a baby, he renovated his house, he had a second baby, then he sold his house, and this was all in the time that he was just sitting in his garage making this stuff. So yeah, it was a massive labour of love and an intensive, hectic workload, particularly for him, because I'd go home and he'd just sit up till 3 a.m. just playing with his dolls.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. The world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. Please support Matt's Movie Reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. You mentioned Mick Fanning just then, and I said in my intro, you got Mick Fanning and you got Mason Ho, you got a bunch of other really kind of top-notch surfing talent involved in the movie, pretty much kind of like playing caricatures of themselves throughout the film. And I think what's really important for that to happen is that I would imagine that maybe some people might have been approached and they couldn't really, separate their ego from like what the project is and what it became. But when you have like guys like Mick and Mason and other people as well, how important was it for them to be able to look at this film not as kind of like a not as a representation of who they are, but kind of like just taking a piss out of themselves and just the surfing culture as a whole and just having fun with it. Because I imagine that them letting go of their egos and just going with the flow in regards to production in the direction that you guys wanted to go with would have been a huge step forward in getting this film made.
Yeah, I think it was absolutely crucial. I don't know if we would have got the funding if Mick and Mason weren't already invested. And Nick Paulette and we've made many films with those two guys. Not so much cinematic or full story narratives, but we've made a lot of different surf films for Rip Curl, starring those two guys. They're called search films. And basically, Mick and Mace, over the past 5 years have just come to trust the creative vision that Nick and I have. And so when it came to get me involved, they were all in. They just went, yeah, if you guys are making it, sweet, because we've had a lot of success with those two guys on these other projects. But it was a little bit scary because when we got those guys to record their voices, we didn't actually give them the entire script. We just gave, and this is all the surfers in it. I think there's 6 or 7 surfers in total. And we didn't want to sort of ruin the surprise of the film for them. So we just gave them their lines, directed them in terms of what emotion they had to read them with. And then once we'd recorded everyone's voices, we sliced them all together into conversations. And so when the surfers went to the premieres, they literally had no idea what the storyline was, how what they had said in their recordings related to what the other surfers were saying. So they were sitting there and watching it all for the first time as a film, as a storyline in the cinema, which, was a little bit scary because, that requires a lot of trust on their part to know that we're not going to completely stitch them up. It's all worked. Everyone's seen it except for Mick Fanning. He hasn't seen it yet. He's currently on a boat trip in the Mentawais in Indonesia. And Nick Paulette is, who is the director of the film, and he is on that boat trip. So I think they're going to show him on the big screen in the boat.
Wow. Oh, well, I'd love to know what his reaction is to the movie, because it's really interesting how you kind of put together. It's almost kind of like a big kind of like jigsaw puzzle, like these different pieces and put together. And from what I understand as well, they're not the only ones who were the first people to see the film at the premiere. You didn't really show the film to, or at least to, with the exception of people in the crew and maybe your distributor, but like there was no kind of test screenings or feedback screenings or anything like that. What you had at the premiere was the first and final version and the only version that went to public. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. No one had seen it. Post Lounge had seen it, and obviously the distributors and producers had seen it. But that was terrifying. I actually didn't understand like how much stress and anxiety I would feel in the lead up, because it's one thing to be sitting in a room for 3 years, not showing anyone and just working on it and making your buddy laugh and having heaps of fun. And then it's another thing to turn up to a packed house and all the pressure of knowing that the surfers, all of a sudden I was thinking, oh my God, what if the surfers hate this thing? Like, what if the jokes don't land? What if, it's really offensive and I've sort of misread my own sense of humor and all this sort of thing. And one of the worst things happened. A friend of mine brought his 11-year-old daughter to the premiere, and I was just devastated. I said to him, like, this is an adults-only film. This is actually borderline, R-rated. Like, please don't bring your daughter. And for some reason, he either didn't listen or whatever, and it just ruined the entire night for me. I was so rattled because it's not made for children. It is not a kids' movie. I mean, I'm okay with parents who feel like their kids are up for watching it. That's fine. But I just didn't feel like this was appropriate. And so, mate, it took me basically 2 or 3 more showings before I was going, oh, hang on a minute. There's no need to panic here, man. Like, everything's good. The surfers loved it. And as I say, like, you go to a comedy and use like a Will Ferrell comedy, like The Other Guys, or maybe Grimsby, or a Sacha Baron Cohen movie where the laughs are quite thick and fast. Like you can laugh a lot in a Borat or Bruno or anything Sacha does, because there's just so much envelope pushing going on constantly. But it's not always like that in cinemas, and particularly comedies. I think you get like maybe 2 or 3 laughs that are full gut busters where the whole cinema's ripping, and then a lot of the time, lots of giggles. But I knew it was landing because, as I said, the 3 or 4 showings we've had have just been non-stop, start to finish, lots of laughing, and it's been really satisfying. So I got past that initial stress, mate, but no thanks to my mate bringing his daughter, that's for sure.
I want to talk about the music in the film because there's original compositions in the movie. And so credited as your composer in the film is Alain Descartes. He does a lot of the original music and the other sound department stuff as well. But you yourself, Vaughan, you're a part of the Goons of Doom, and you have a lot of kind of like tracks in your repertoire that's very similar and lyric wise to some of the songs that we hear in the movie. How much did you put in regards to the songwriting in the songs shown in the film, or is it all just Elaine taking care of that?
No, it's all Alain. He did every bit of sound engineering, from jackets swooping and arms moving to the entire soundtrack. He is so talented. He can play everything. He's a sound engineer, so he records everything on his own. He pulled in a few different voices, and I did contribute to one of the songs. But he's just, I really don't know how to describe him other than a total freak genius. Which is funny because, I always, if you sort of hear directors and stuff talk about the sound engineering departments, that's how a lot of these people are described, because, they bring so much emotion. They're absolutely crucial to every single moment in the film to add that extra layer of either meaning or stress or build up or brevity or whatever it is. It relies so much on these guys, and he and Nick have been best friends forever and ever. They're in a band together actually called Les Krills, and they make really good music. But yeah, his contribution to this film just can't even be understated at all, because he would, we'd describe a character, we'd describe a scene to him, and he would go home that night, do a demo and have it ready, and we could actually start working on that scene with the full emotion of it in check. He was that quick. And then he redid everything towards the end to make sure it was all polished.
Well, I think he did a really great job in the film, because it was interesting watching it. At first, I thought I was listening to something like, that might have been recorded before, but then the lyrics, it was like, wait a minute, I think this is written for the film, and sure enough, it was. And I reckon it's really right in tune with the humor in the movie. And I think what's really interesting about, after I watched, the greatest surf movie in the universe, is that it kind of, I kind of I wrote down in my notes, is like, what is a surf movie? Because I have seen different documentaries, and not so many kind of like dramas and such. I've been a few, but mostly like surf films do come in the form of documentaries, real life stories. And there's the same kind of subjects do kind of come into the equation. Some of it has to do with spirituality, some of it has to do with environment, some has to do with philosophy or trauma. A movie like this, of course, isn't going to tap into a lot of those things. It does spoof some of those things as well. And I think that's what's really important in regards to your film. And of course, it is a film made to have a good time and made to enjoy, but also, I think, hopefully, can just shake things up a little bit in regards into approach of filmmakers can have towards the subject of surfing on screen, because I think that there needs to be a little more variety in the approach, not only to how it's done on screen, but different kind of things you can say about surfing as a whole. Because from what I can tell from your perspective of it, that it's not those other things in regards to spirituality and philosophy and connection to the oceans or what have you. That's all well and good, but not everyone is in surfing for that on its own.
No, and I think that what you're touching on there is very true. Surfing, it only needs to be what you need it to be for you. Like you don't need it. If you want to tap into surfing as a a healing experience, as a spiritual experience, as something that is important and not to be laughed about, that's completely fine, because it can be that to you, and it has every right to be that to the individual and their experience of it. But like I said before, not at the expense of other people enjoying surfing in their way and in a way that is meaningful to them. And I think where we're at in surfing is, there's a very sort of glossy, professional, it's a pathway for a lot of people, whether it's a sport, whether it's, a chance for escapism and all of that. And I think it all has every right to exist, but this has every right to exist as well. And that's my sort of area of satisfaction at the end of making this film is, it can be whatever you want it to be, but it's allowed to be and it should be. And that's cool. That makes me feel good. And just on your point about humour, like, if you want to find some insane surfing humour and really good commentary and spoofing, it's all there. It's just that it's on social media and it's being done by kids who will probably one day make films. I think what we're on the cusp of is a massive movement of really, really funny stuff that's going to start coming out. And, I would even argue that, the Inspired Unemployed, they are really good surfers. They know how to laugh. Like they know how to get you laughing. And, everyone who's come sort of in the wake of those guys has the potential to reawaken a really massive gap in surf filmmaking for sure. And I think that this will probably be a bit of a spark and maybe get everyone thinking that they can go bigger with their ideas and their creative sort of outlets. But definitely it has been a long time since we've seen just an all-out feature-length comedy on surfing. Like I feel like Surfer Dude might have been the last one, and that one missed the mark completely. It's funny, like it's almost like the more earnest you try to make your film about surfing, particularly if it's Hollywood doing it, the more of an unintentional comedy it becomes. But yeah, this was an intentional sort of no holds barred, no punches pulled attempt to make a surf comedy. There's definitely no questioning that. And yeah, I think I'm really happy with the result. Like it's definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I wouldn't, I don't even know if I could watch it sitting next to my mum, but I know that it's going to land for a lot of kids and they're going to have a fun time watching it.
And so for everyone out there listening, the greatest surf movie in the universe, currently on a roadshow around the country. So next stop, Hayden Orpheum in Sydney, Monday, 22nd of May. Go to garage.com.au, find out more information and buy tickets. And I really recommend that people, if you're going to watch this, take your friends with you, go out to the cinema, have a good time with it. Because this is the film, to me, you really have to go with the flow with the comedy. You really have to just embrace the movie for what it is. And for me, it's kind of like a mix of kind of like the Blues Brothers and Team America. These guys are on a mission to bring back surfing, and they're going to do it any way that they can, and it's done with lots of humor. There's heart in there as well, but lots of humor as well. And I just think it's a really well done. I think it's a movie that I really appreciate because, as I said before, the perception of what a surf movie is compared to a movie like the greatest surf movie in the universe, a movie like this, I think, really does shake the foundations, and I think movies need to do that. And it's also great to see a comedy that's willing to embrace a really kind of un-PC nature from Australian filmmakers, because we don't see that enough. And I actually love comedy like that. And Vaughan Blakey, I thank you so very much for your time today. Best of luck with the film's release and the roadshow around the country. And yeah, man, if another film comes up, please let me know. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
You too, Matt. Thanks for having us on. And yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed it, mate. That's lovely to hear, especially in light of the fact that it hasn't really traveled outside the surf world all that much. I think the only people who've seen the surfers. So I'm really stoked that, it can sort of get into a wider sphere of the community and hopefully be enjoyed as well.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, If you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.